What's going on, guys? What's going on? What's going on? Give y'all a second to come on in. Make sure my sound's good. Are we sounding good? Are we good to go? I hope you guys watched All or Nothing. I'll be nice tonight, though. I'll give you a spoiler alert before I start talking about like the details of the episode, but I won't get into too much details. So maybe I might not ruin it too much for you guys. I'm gonna actually try to stay within an hour. Because last week I hit 2.5 hours, so I'm gonna make an effort to try to stay within an hour, maybe a little over an hour. We'll see. Um, yeah, so like in New England, it felt like the Carolinas this weekend. We got a nice 95, 99, 100-degree type of weekend. It was pretty intense. And you can tell that the Rhode Islanders are used to dealing with that type of humidity and that type of weather. Because a lot of folks weren't feeling it, and I was not. Like, I was having flashbacks of how bad the weather could be when it's super hot in Columbia, South Carolina. But the New England Rhode Island got a decent taste of that, and I guess in New York during a fighting game tournament somebody passed away, but they're still trying to get the details on that. But I want to give folks a couple minutes, about another minute to pile on in, and we're going to start going through these episodes one by one. Hopefully I can try to get it done in an hour. I will give a spoiler alert warning before I talk about each episode. I will try my best not to overlap the episodes. There will be some level of freestyling. I got to watch the series twice. So, I'm going to go with what I remember. I didn't really take too many notes, but there was a lot of moments that I do want to talk about within the show, and I'm pretty sure the chat cats will let me know about anything else that I've missed. This is the review episode. So, spoiler alert, I'm going to go per episode if I can. But we'll shall see. But I will give an overall assessment of the show at the beginning. Overall, I think the series was really good. I think it was done well. I think I completely understand why Tepper was all in with regards to the making this happen, because he embraced it. I I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he wants to change the image, because Tepper didn't bother. Tepper bought the team on an interesting set of terms from the standpoint of why the previous owner had to sell the team, and I think this series changes the perspective of the franchise, and it's an international play too. Like, everybody has Amazon all over the world, so when you see like an NFL series, because a lot of folks have Amazon Prime as well, so when you see an NFL series, you're going to see more Panthers jerseys in other parts of the world, which is not a bad thing. That's a good branding. And there's little things that you notice. Like, they didn't talk about why Tepper became the new owner. They didn't get into any details about that. There's a lot of things that they didn't discuss with regards to the series, and we'll get into some of those intricacies when we go through it. Yes, that's right, Jared. They didn't show the Jerry statue. They did not mention him at all. Not once. I think they said they had over 10,000 hours of recording, and they didn't show him once and didn't mention him once, and I'm fine with that, because it's about the image shift for the Panthers. It's a brand new franchise. So let's get started. Like I said, I enjoyed the series a lot. The first episode, Oh, by the way, here's your spoiler alert for episode 1. So if you haven't watched it, I'm going to recommend for you to go ahead, take a little break, take a little breather, watch this later, and then we'll go from there. So the first episode was basically how the season should go for 2018. There was high expectations for the season. Some folks were were saying that we had a really good shot to get into the Super Bowl. I mean, we had a first round playoff exit, so they had high hopes for us, and they opened the season up against Dallas. They analyzed like some of the intricacies of the game. We looked good for the most part, and you might hear some thunder and lightning in the background because this is the other part of the weather that we got. So it's very possible that I could potentially lose power because it's lightning pretty hard outside. But we'll see how it goes tonight. So like the first episode mainly focused on preparing for the season, the anticipation for the season, the expectations for the season. And then we went into episode 1. Then we went into the first game of the season, which was in Charlotte against Dallas. We won the game 16-8. It was a pretty decent episode. It was just pretty much an intro episode. I mean, it was good for what it was, and it was great to see the team flourish and get an opening win in Charlotte. Now I was pretty happy after watching this one, the first episode. But overall, this was a really good episode. The second, which leads on to episode 2, which is interesting because the second game of the season was against the Atlanta Falcons, and that was the focus for the second episode at the beginning, and that was around the same time where folks were having trouble getting out of town because of the hurricane, and so was I because I actually went to that game. I was at the game in Atlanta, and the second episode. Yeah, the is beyond back to episode 1. That is Beyonce's considered old school had me in tears because the answer was spot on. But I'm not part of the Hive, but that song was spot on considering how our season went. But back to episode 2, so it focused on like making the adjustments to the travel arrangement to get to Atlanta for the game. Luckily, the hurricane didn't really impact the travel schedule that much, if at all. It just had folks being prepared for if they had to leave a day or two early. I ended up having to leave early to go to the game because I didn't want to take any chances, and I was down there for some work as well. So, but the series, we know what happened with the Falcons game. They put a focus on the dirty hit, and like you got to see like Ron Rivera in his like intense form, like because normally you might just see the face. Occasionally you'll see some emotion out of him, but you got the full-fledged profanity across the board. And him going at the refs was awesome to see because, sometimes you think, Ron's mild-mannered, but like that's one thing that I got out of this entire series as a whole. You get to see Ron be Ron in a coaching environment, and it made me respect the hell out of him more than I already did as a head coach. And you got to see it throughout the series. We'll get into Cam because that's another thing too. Like Cam, like this series is gonna help the perception of Cam, and it's gonna help in a good way, in a phenomenal way, because all the perception about Cam not being a leader, Cam not being respected by his teammates, all that goes out the window now. Because Cam overall, he is respected by his teammates. They love him. He is a great leader, and he knows his stuff. Like, all the false media perceptions probably got to know now, which makes me love the fact that they decided to do this series. So, obviously, we lost the Falcons game. This was for the Panther Nation podcast. After this one, this was when, Rashad felt a certain type of way about DJ Moore not getting love. Nah, people change their mind about Cam, man. I think folks need to watch the series. I really do. And I think folks just need to watch the series. So, I think the perception will change a bit because I think more people are talking about the series than normal, and I think part of it is because of Cam, because of the type of polarizing figure Cam is. So it was kind of good to see him in this light for a full season. So like this episode focused on two games. It focused on the Bengals game and the Falcons game. We lost the Falcons game, and we won the Bengals game. And this was the Bengals game was the F.A. Obata coming out party. He had a sack, an interception, and a quarterback pressure. I mean, he had the best man. He got the game ball for the Bengals game. They did a whole scene about him being back in Europe. Saw Rob Ryan, who used to be a coach in the NFL, and now he's out coaching in Europe. So, it was that was a pretty good episode. F.A. Obata's story is insane, man. Like when they got into the details of his story and how and what he had to go through, because he was born in Nigeria and then he ended up in London and he was like pretty much in the streets. Like he lived it. He lived it. And then like football was his out. Then he got his opportunity in the international program. And he finally made it to a team. And that's why I'm hoping he makes the team so he gets to play in London, man. It'll be awesome. It's going to be interesting, too, in training camp about, with the defensive line. But I'm hoping he can make the team, man. I really do. I want him to make the team because I want him to see that. I want him to get to play in London. So that would be awesome to see in October if he makes the team. All right. So at the end of this second episode, they kind of go into we're hitting the bye week, and they do a little teaser about help is on the way, which interesting enough. I'm gonna get into some interesting details with regards to that with episode 4. So it's about help on the way, and we go into episode 3. Spoiler alert: we're in episode 3 right now. Episode 3. What? Yeah, that CMC joke was funny about Ethel. That was hilarious. So episode 3 was it started about the bye week, and of course during the bye week we signed Eric Reed. But the big thing about this episode was that you really got to see behind the scenes of the discussions that were had of making the decision to sign Eric Reed. And it was pretty cool that Tepper was ready to he wanted to have a forum set up for him, that was away from the Panthers compound. He said he was willing to set shop up at City Hall for him. So that was some awesome things. And you can see that Cam was for it. He explained what he expected out of it. He talked to Ron. Ron talked to Torrey Smith. You saw the conversations that had to be had, and it was pretty cool with regards to how that unfolded. And then they brought Eric Reed in, and then you see people talking about they're worried about the lawsuits and things of that nature. But the bottom line is they signed Eric Reed. I love the signing then. I still love it now. I love the fact that Tepper admitted that it took some balls to do what he did. And, because he kind of went against the owners a bit when you sit down and think about it, because I think they were trying to blackball him out of the league, because otherwise they wouldn't have settled out of that lawsuit. So overall, it was a great move for Carolina, and he long-term, he ended up signing a long-term deal with us, which is good. But overall, they focused on the bye week. And then we got to see Luke in his element, man, studying film. And he talked about how, it's tough to study Saquon Barkley because Saquon Barkley was, he's only had a few games in the NFL, so there wasn't too much film on him. He talked about how he believed that if you have, if you can get 2 or 3 big plays off of just film watching, that's a win type of thing. But you could see that he studied film like there's no tomorrow. And then, at some point, they went to practice. And I might be going out of order, but it's within the same episode. At some point, they went to practice to talk to Gano about kicking and how far he could kick it, which was interesting. It was a pretty dope segue going into the Giants game because, as you know, we ended up winning that game with a 63-yard field goal. So, all right, I'm going to take a stop to look at these comments real quick before I go into the next episode. But yeah, we hit the game-winning field goal. Gano got the game ball and all that. But I'm going to hit these comments real quick. So, with regards to Eric Reed's comments about the locker rooms, I think like a lot of locker rooms in college are better than the ones in the NFL, man. Like from the big football schools, they invest a lot of money into that stuff. So that wouldn't shock me. I'm not shocked by that. I'm not shocked by that. It has nothing to do with Richardson. I think there's other NFL owners that probably don't put in their much money into it either. You know, so it all depends. Because college money got it's a different set of money. Eric was just trying to make a point about like, you should be like supporting the kids and paying the kids instead of all these having big screen TVs for them and stuff. All right, so let's get into episode number 4, which had arguably the best before of the season. So before the Redskins game, and I didn't even talk about the Greg Olsen injury, but I think you guys know about that when he got injured in week 1 against Dallas. So the scene of the season was when Luke FaceTimed Josh Norman before the Redskins game, and they were going back and forth. That was hilarious. First thing Josh asked him, "Yo, is Greg playing?" And Luke was like, "Nah, he ain't playing." And Cam's like, "Come on, man, which side you on?" So they're playing the lie, which is hilarious because Greg did end up playing that game against Washington. And then Cam was like, "Yo, now you got to give us something. Now you got to give us something." Cam was like, "Hey, man, you playing? You starting our quarterback this week?" And everybody was laughing. And I thought it was just hilarious with the back and forth. But to come to find out that the week before, Josh Norman got benched. He got benched in the second half. So that's why they asked him if he was starting next week. So that was hilarious. So, and then Josh was talking about how he wasn't going low. And then Cam said he's not juking if it's 24. If 24, if I see 24, I ain't juking. So that was hilarious. So that was that. If you don't watch any episodes, that's the one to watch. Episode 4 was the one to watch. All right. So of course, episode 4 had DJ Moore. DJ Moore had a rough day. He fumbled twice. One of the fumbles cost him 3 points. The Panthers were down 17 points going into the second half. They almost made the comeback, but they just didn't get enough to finish it. So they end up losing that game, and then they mulled on the loss a bit, and then I think the end of that game it showed, Cam still said good game, but Cam, he hates losing, and you can see that, but it was still a good sportsmanship type of thing, and Josh knew who he was because Josh was smiling, Josh was just smiling throughout the whole thing after the game was over. And then we go into the game against the Eagles. And, of course, and then the Panthers, once again, was down 17. And they made the comeback to win the game against the Eagles 21-17. And this was DJ's hometown, DJ Moore's hometown. He had an okay game. And it worked out. The Panthers ended up winning that game. And that kind of ended the episode at that point. So that's episode 4. Now, episode 5 is when it starts getting interesting. So episode 5, at the beginning of the episode, they do a timeline about Cam's shoulder. And eventually they go back from 2017 when he had his first surgery. And then they went through the whole ordeal until they showed now. And then they showed now Cam's shoulder was sore, it was in a sling. And this was right after the Philadelphia game. So at this point, that was the episode. Like the Eagles game was where he started getting soreness in his shoulder. So at that point, they're managing his shoulder injury. So you get to see like behind the scenes of like how they're managing the shoulder injury and how he's not really practicing until the end of the week. He's not throwing until the end of the week. And they go through that. But then the next game he went up against the Ravens, and the Panthers played a phenomenal game against the Ravens. So it was really good to watch. And then of course the game after that, we played the Bucks. And we also won that game as well. And then they start doing the back and forth with Dante Jackson, because Dante Jackson up until this point was having a really good year, and like the back and forth with the assistant secondary coach was interesting to watch, because Dante wasn't having it. Like Dante really wasn't having it. So Dante was not trying to take heed of the advice. And it got to the point where like the players pretty much, a couple of the folks in the secondary, Mike Adams, Eric Reed, Captain Munderland, they pretty much pulled Dante to the side and was like, look, man, we see all your mistakes. So like folks are not noticing it, but we see your mistakes because we're out on the field and the interceptions are masking all the mistakes that you're making. But the bottom line is we see your mistakes. And, he still got a little bit on the defensive side. And they pretty much was telling him, like, you got to lock in because you're about to play against one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You're going to be going up against Antonio Brown. All right. So, like, seeing that puts a lot of perspective in, like, how things were going, how Dante's season was going. Because, they were getting at him about like, yeah, man, you got the potential to be one of the greatest corners in the NFL, one of the best corners in the NFL. But there's certain things that you just got to have your focus in on. And we before we get into the Steelers and Panthers game, they talked Tepper about how he's from Pittsburgh and how he really wants to win this game, and how the Steelers was like, was it. And they showed him his house, and all that, and it was great. And then they got into the game, and it got ugly really fast. It looked good at the beginning. We got the first drive, go to the first touchdown, and then the Steelers scored a touchdown on the first play. So it was pretty quick. And eventually, there was a play where like Antonio Brown pretty much beat Dante, and Dante's complaining because he stretched his arm the whole time, and so Dante felt a certain type of way. He was frustrated. You saw Cam's leadership to try to get him to calm down. You saw the secondary chose to try to get him to calm down. Like you saw everything trying to get Dante to calm down and stay on it. And you got to see Ron Rivera in rare form. Like he straight up went at his squad across the board, but first he focused on Dante to let him know not to let anybody punk you like that, not let anybody push you around, and how to be physical and how it's a long game. You gotta just focus at the task at hand. But Ron was going at his squad. So the second half happens, and Dante shut him down, and he beat him one catch for -3 yards for the rest of the game. But the damage was already done. Steelers was able to score at will. I think this was like the first time I think this is where we legitimately had a concern on the defensive side of the ball. I think people were concerned about the defense, but I think this was the game that kind of like made it look kind of bad. This is the first phase of it. Then there were other phases, and we'll get to that. And so the episode ends on a sour note with a loss. And of course, everybody in this board knows that this is where the streak begins. So I'm going to check out the chat real quick and see what we're going at. Yeah, man. Nah, I care, Larry, that we won against y'all because the Bucks are trash. All right, but we'll get to the Bucks later. You know what? I was afraid to start watching the series. I was afraid to watch the series from the Steelers point on because I knew like going through it reminded me of how we kept losing these games, and it was tough. Like it was tough, but it was so well done. So like there was at some points where like I watched all the games and I'm thinking, oh, we about to win this joint. And then no, yeah. Then I remember. Then I saw that we lost, and then I remembered that yeah, that's how it exactly went down. So, but anywho, so let's get to episode. Let's get to episode 6, man. Man, this was the Devin Funchess episode. You know, he get to go home to the D. You find out that he was having some issues with the coaches around week 3, and it was because he had a death in the family, and he ended up you know going through that and maturing, and then trying to get through the season with the tough things that was going on in his life at the time. And he came from a rough neighborhood in Detroit, so you know he doesn't know how to be open to other cats. He didn't know how to be open about certain things because he didn't tell his coach that he had a death in the family, so to speak. So like he kept that inside of him, but his frustration showed in the practice field. So Funch was a tough sell, but that happened back in week 3. So like back in week 3, we were still sitting in a pretty decent spot. So like, you know, but the game against Detroit, man, that was like the game. That was probably his worst game. That was definitely his worst game of the year. He had a multitude of drops. And this is, of course, was also the game where Ron Rivera made the decision to go for the win after scoring the touchdown, going for 2 points. And of course, they missed it. And like at the end of the game, you know, and you got to see Ron Rivera. He was cussing, throwing stuff. So I respect Ron so much as a coach because like you never see this side of him. So it was awesome to see. So you know, and yeah, they did it because Gano was shaky, and Riverboat is Riverboat. You know, there's a lot of fingers to blame. I think the interesting part of it was, you know, they were interviewing Funches. They were interviewing Funches, and then they kept showing Cam because Cam was getting dressed, and like you would occasionally see Funches look at Cam type of thing. So that was an interesting dynamic. And then I agree that was the right call. But the other thing that was interesting was after the game was over and Cam went to go analyze the play, you could see Cam's frustration. And Cam straight up said he was going to run, but then he saw the flash, but he didn't set his feet. And that's why the throw was where it was. And you could see like the agony, like you could see the emotion because he knew that was kind of on him, you know. But those are the breaks sometimes, because even as bad as Funches was, as bad as day that Gano had that day, we still was a play away from winning the game. So like it's just so Cam, like he was like done. That was a very rough loss because that was like one of those games that we should have won, kind of like the Redskins game was one of those games that we should have won. So that was a tough one. That was a tough loss. And so then at this point, Cam went to go talk to Funches about trying to focus on going up against Seattle. Which you know, and of course we lost that game, but the fact of losing that game is interesting because we were playing pretty well, and then Dante Jackson got hurt, and then we brought in Corn Elder, and Russell Wilson knew we brought in Corn Elder, and they destroyed us with Corn Elder. Corn Elder got destroyed. So it really got super interesting then because earlier in the season they were going at Dante Jackson but at this point Dante was getting a feel for his own at this point. And then like when he got hurt and Elder had to come in, it was night and day. Elder wasn't ready and Elder got burnt. Every person that went against Elder got beat. And that literally cost us the game. And even Tepper, like Kel said Tepper knew they were going to pick on Corn. Like he called it. He said, "Yeah, they're about to pick on Elder. They're going to pick on Elder," and that's exactly what they did, and they ended up winning that game. And that ends the episode. That was a tough loss. That's just a bad break. At this point, the loser streak's at 3. We're gonna let me see. Corn is still on the team as of now. I don't think going for 2 was stupid. And there was one other thing I didn't talk about. Like, so in episode 6. So Cam went out and gave out free dinners, free food for some of the people. So some of the homeless folks or folks that aren't well off, and some of the folks that need Thanksgiving dinners. And even one of the homeless guys was pretty much saying, "You should have ran it in. You should have ran it in, Cam." So even like Cam was still taking the heat after the bad loss. I didn't have an issue with them going for 2 in the Detroit game. I thought, and even when I was watching the game, I was cool with them going for 2. And it's one of those situations where if they would have gotten it, Rivera would have been a genius. Because he didn't get it, he's a duck. He's a doofus. But those are the type of risks that you have to make sometimes. He's on the road. He's trying to get this win and get out of here. Can't be mad at that. Can't be mad at it. I wasn't mad at it then. I'm not mad at it now. There's a lot of things I could blame the game on, even though Cam was devastated because Cam knew. Cam wanted to go for it. All right, so let's get into episode 7. Now this is where it gets interesting. So we play the Bucks in Tampa. We can't stop a thing, and this was at the point where they made the decision to make some coaching changes after this game when they lost to the Bucks, because they were able to run on us, they were able to throw on us, like they pretty much were able to do whatever they wanted. And they fired 2 coaches. The ones they ended up firing was Brady Hoke, and they fired Jeff Uramura, I think his last name. I might have mispronounced it. They fired him, which ironically enough, that was the assistant secondaries coach that was going back and forth with Dante Jackson. So they fired him, and they fired Brady Hoke, who was a defensive line coach. So they fired them both. And Rivera started after the Bucks game. Rivera made the decision to call the plays on the defense. So then you get to see. So now you get to see the dynamic of Eric Washington and Rivera going back and forth, going like working together, not back and forth. You get to see Rivera now sitting in the defensive rooms, defensive coaching rooms and things of that nature, But we lost to Cleveland. So then the next game we lost to Cleveland. And at this point, we pretty much are in a win or go home type of situation. We mathematically were still in the playoffs at this point. And we got to go to New Orleans. We got a home game on Monday Night Football against the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, in the Bucks game, they saw TD asking for a simple play, yeah. Yeah, that was a rough game, man. But that was like one of those, I remember at the beginning of the season when we did our schedule predictions, when we looked at the schedule, I said, I hate the fact that we're playing the Browns so late, because at that point, Baker would probably be hitting his stride. So it won't be an easy game anymore. So, yeah, I mean, Washington was over in his head, but I mean, you got to respect Rivera for making the adjustment that was needed. And you got to remember that this is like the 3rd defensive coordinator we've had in 3 years. So like when you start thinking about the perspective, eventually you're going to get to a point where it's like, all right, well, you can't hit them all. I think we do. I have to double check the schedule. I think we do play Kyler early in the year. But I think like the majority of the episode, this episode was focused on that Monday Night Saints game, and our defense was playing lights out. But it was an indication that like the offensive coordinator knew that Cam couldn't make all the throws, and you could see it. You could see it that Norv knew that Cam couldn't make all the throws. So we lost that game. We're going through this game. We're in it. We're close. and we have multiple opportunities, but Cam couldn't make the throws. Our defense had the best game of the season. Tepper knew that Cam couldn't throw. It was just a disaster. And then the episode ends with the Saints fumbling in the end zone, fumbling out of bounds in the end zone. So it was a touchback. And the Panthers had the ball, and they had an opportunity to get down the field to potentially either tie or win the game. And that's how the episode ended. And then the final episode, episode 8, we're at the point of figuring out what's going to happen. We all knew what was going to happen. So, like, for me, the cliffhanger was kind of whack because I already knew the conclusion, and then you knew it was over. You know, they didn't get there. We lost the game, and then they made the decision to shut down Cam, and they talked about Taylor Heineke. They talked about Taylor Heineke getting his first start. They really didn't go too much further than that. Like, they showed him get his touchdown pass, but after that, it just got ugly. They pretty much showed that, all right, the Falcons swept the floor with us. Then they showed us beat the Saints. We swept the floor with the Saints. And then that was pretty much, from a season standpoint, that was it. And then they talked about the long-term plans. They talked about the bubble. And they talked about the headquarters that they wanted to do. You know, Cam was a team player, man. He helped Taylor prepare for the game. Like I'm telling you, this is going to help the perception of Cam. Like, it is going to help the perception of Cam. So the final episode pretty much focuses on a couple players and say, yeah, you know, they talked about Thomas leaving. They talked about Thomas saying he's leaving, but he wants to come back. Pep retiring. Khalil was crying pretty bad after the Saints game because he knew that was pretty much it. You know, and they talked about a lot of the moving pieces. They went into the first round pick of the draft and talked about long term about picking up more players. And they showed some stuff from the combine when they were naming the players that we had an interest in. We ended up drafting Brian Burns. So, like, you see all that, and then they get to the details about the bubble and the next and how to prepare for the next season. I think overall it was a phenomenal series. I'm probably gonna watch it a few more times. I recommend, if you haven't watched it all the way, please do. I'm looking forward to see how we do this year. I think the expectations are high, as they should be. It looks like Cam's going to be ready to rock. I did see Matt Khalil at his brother's house. Yeah, man, that was a tough thing to watch too, with Khalil, Peppers, and TD being in the Panther uniform for the last time. But yeah, man, I think we got a lot of build up going into this next season. I think we have potential to make some moves if we can stay healthy. So it's going to be key for training camp. There was a couple other things that there was one thing that I did not mention that I wanted to ask you guys about. So for the Panthers-Eagles game, and this is how you know, like, it's great that the Panthers had some level of control about what was shown and what wasn't. So for the Panthers-Eagle game, I don't know if you guys remember, but Eric Reed had a beef with, I believe, with one of the Eagles players. I think it was Michael Bennett at the time, and before the game, and they didn't mention that one bit, and that was very interesting, because that would be something that would be like a juicy detail that, you know, people would want to have in their series. They didn't mention it one bit, and I was cool with it. I was absolutely cool with it. Michael Jenkins, that's who it was. I couldn't remember who it was. It was one of those guys, man. It was Malcolm Jenkins. So it was just interesting to see that wasn't mentioned at all. They did show Eric Reed take a knee in his first game as a Panther. You know, that was an interest. You know, so, like, you know, you pick your spots. Like, you get to see conclusions of certain things. But, like, Eric Reed, though, as a whole, really wasn't a distraction for the team for the season. But you know, but I just, you know, they didn't go into that. They did not go into that at all. So move out for a cheesesteak. So order Earth Slam. That is right. Yeah, like, and that's the way it should be, though, right? Because Eric was playing pretty well. I mean, when you start going into the perspective of everything, Eric was playing pretty well. So you he didn't really do anything. They didn't talk about the fact that they kept drug testing him. Like there's things that they didn't go into. Like there was just a lot of things that they didn't go into. But overall, man, I really enjoyed the series. I highly recommend folks to watch it. I think I hit most of the points. I might have missed a few things. I kind of winged it today. I didn't have slides today. But overall, it was a good. It was a great series. I enjoyed watching it. Cam had a lot of quotables. Cam had a few interviews during some of the episodes. You know, I mean, they had their moments. But I think it for what the organization wanted to do, I think it served its purpose. Um, because it served its purpose because it helps get the brand names out, and it also kind of cleans up the whole how the ownership thing ended too. What did I forget? What did I forget, Noli? $50 and 50 Let me see here if I have any interesting questions. Yeah, there was Greg with his third leg. Yeah, no Bradbury. Bradbury really didn't get that much talk. Bradbury didn't get that much talk. Rivera mentioned how there was no longer. Yeah, and that was when Thomas Davis went. I'm trying to remember if that was episode. I think that was episode 6 when that happened, when he talked about how there was no accountability on defense, and that was also the same episode where Thomas Davis basically said, hey man, this is not." It was episode 7. "Hey man, this is not how we supposed to do it." And he complained about the fact that the coach shouldn't have to say that, and he was right. No, not the brief Cam Smitty combo. What about the Smitty DJ Moore combo? That was hilarious. He was asking Cam for fantasy football advice, and then he went to DJ Moore, was like, "Yo, man, do I play you or John Brown?" Serious question. Serious question. And then he was like, "You give me 2 points, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you." That was hilarious. That was hilarious. Loved it. I just loved it. Of course, I mean, ain't nothing wrong with that. I ain't you. Nobody's mentioned DeAndre Hopkins, man. Yo, man. It was just great to get. It was great to have a Smitty appearance in it at all, and they gave him a highlight reel, which was dope too. And that was a game against the Ravens. So that was, if I remember correctly, that would be episode number 4. No, 5. Put him at flex because he ain't a real wide receiver yet. That's not all for nothing, Dave. Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to be able to hit every single element. Like you're only going to hit certain elements. I'm not going to training camp this year, man. Rashad is though, so I hope you guys are ready, man. Because if last weekend is any indication of the type of heat that South Carolina is getting, I'm praying for y'all. It was hot this weekend. No, I haven't seen Kyle Hurd or Reggie Bush talking about all or nothing. I have no interest in that. Hardly know Curtis Samuel. 10,000 hours of footage. None of that. No, the way it works is that typically like they pick a team to follow for the season, and last year it was us, and they kept quiet, and so they followed them. Just like when Hard Knocks, you're gonna follow somebody during the preseason. It's the same concept. They pick a team, but like with Amazon, they kind of quietly did it. They didn't want to let folks know who it was, so there was like a surprise that hey, it was Carolina that they followed. I was happy that they picked this. It was I think in a perfect world, I think Amazon of course will want to pick a team that's going to go pretty far in the playoffs. But considering all the drama that was going down with the Panthers, they're a pretty good team considering when you make the playoffs. Because you got to see the difference when you start 6-2 and then all of a sudden you see the bottom fall off. It was as a Panthers fan, it was tough to watch, but I can understand it being riveting television for the casual watcher. Because it was riveting. It was really great television. Because you get to see like how like the season falling apart. Like you go, all right, it's just one. When they lose this, it's all right, it's just one game. Then they lose the next game because of they missed 2-point conversion. Then they lost to Seattle because of injuries, and then the defense just pretty much fell apart against the Bucs. And Cleveland was a young all-star team, and then you finally fix the defense, and Cam can't throw the ball anymore. And then at that point, the season's over, and then you start to back up. And yeah, it was really good. Yeah, they were NFL Network. I loved it, man. It was great to watch. It was great to watch. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching it. And there's folks that aren't Panthers fans that said it was a great watch. I love Norv. I think Norv still has it. I think Norv did a phenomenal job with throughout the series. Like you knew that he could coach. And I know some people have a perception that look, man, he's been things have changed over the last 30 years, but I disagree. Like he still knows offense, and it showed. He had some phenomenal plays in there, but it comes down to a matter of execution. It comes down to a matter of execution. So overall, I enjoy Norv. Yeah, even in the Saints game, the one touchdown we got in that Saints game was a phenomenal play call. Phenomenal. I like Norv, man. I like Norv, and I like Norv. I like the relationship that Scott Turner had with Cam too. Like, I just was enjoying watching the back and forth that they were having. Like it was really good. It was a great play. It was a great play call. And it was smart too because they knew that Cam couldn't throw. So I'm cool with Norv. But I think, Eric Washington, we saw that he might have been a little bit over his head. And and it was appreciative to see that Eric was fine with there was no beefs about it when Ron started taking over the plays. You just saw him do his thing, and that defense played much better. So it's going to be curious to see. I think Rivera's probably going to continue to call the plays for now, but we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, man, I really enjoyed the series. But yeah, man, training camp starts this week. I hope you got your water ready because you're going to need it. Well, I mean, this was pretty much like a Hard Knocks. When you sit down and think about it, this is probably more detailed than a Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks is only like 4 episodes. You know what I'm saying? Four episodes, whereas this was 8 episodes. Went through the entire season. Like this was pretty. It's very Hard Knock-ish. It's still NFL films, so it was pretty good. Yeah, it's looking like this might be the last year of Warfare. I don't think they officially announced it, but I think this is going to be it. Yeah, I mean, Cam had a really good year, man. Even with that injury, it's just nobody likes the ending of how it went down, but Cam had a pretty good year. And the thing that made it more amazing to me is that his shoulder started becoming sore after the Eagles game. So it probably got hurt while he was probably making that fourth quarter comeback potentially. And then he balls out against the Ravens. He balls out against the Bucks. And then it all started falling apart. And when I looked at the replay of the hit that pretty much kind of exacerbated the injury in the Pittsburgh game, the one thing that I noticed was that Watt didn't purposely injure him. Watt actually kind of let up a little bit and make sure he didn't get a helmet hit. So it was kind of like an accident type of situation. No, if they made the playoffs, it would have still been 8. They just would have focused on other things. They would have focused on other things. Yeah, but when you look at the replay of that TJ Watt hit, you'll see him kind of like lowering a little bit because he didn't want to do a helmet to helmet. So like he was trying to be conscious of where he had him because he couldn't hit him in his head because it would have been a penalty. Well, I mean, some of the episodes were 35 minutes, others were like 45, so it all depends on the situation at hand. So like, I mean, it's prepared. It's pretty much set up for if you want to do it with commercials, you can. So when they do show it on NFL Network, these joints will probably be about an hour. So two other teams didn't make the playoffs and were still longer than ours. Cowboys and Rams had 55-minute episodes. Well, but did they show the Cowboy and Rams on Amazon? I mean did they show them on the how many episodes did the Cardinals get? They showed it on NFL Network. Right. All right. So that might have been a factor too, though, because we didn't make the playoffs. But there's a lot of factors into it. I was happy that they picked us. Like I'm a big advocate of seeing like my squad behind the scenes because you get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I am cool. I was absolutely cool with it because I'm all for seeing my squad on television. It was pretty good exposure for them, and considering the offseason that they had from the standpoint of the owner and all that other stuff, it was great to see. It was great to see. All right, let's see here. But all right, I told myself I wasn't going to go more than an hour tonight. So it's absolutely worth the Prime sub, but there's other reasons why you want to get the Prime sub, man. Biggest winners, losers of the series. Biggest winners: Cam, Rivera, Tepper. Those are my 3. Cam, Rivera, Tepper. Biggest loser would probably be Dante. Dante, he didn't look good coming out of this. Funches kind of loser. It kind of exacerbated how bad that Detroit game was, even with the stuff that he was going with. Luke was a winner too. But like when you talk about the main three, it was Cam, Rivera, Tepper, by far, by far. Like their image, I think their image is going to take a bigger shift this go round, and I think Panthers fans might respect what they roll with, and non-Panthers fans might actually respect how good of a coach Rivera is. Like you'll hear insiders say, "Oh, Rivera's a good coach," but you actually get to see it. Like some people always thought that Rivera was just a guy, but nah, he's far from that. He knows his stuff, man. We got to quit disrespecting Rivera like that. There's a reason why he's stuck around in Charlotte for as long as he has. He's one of the best coaches in the NFL. We need to appreciate it. Gano, Gano had the 63-yarder, so it's like a wash. Like it ain't. Gano had the 63-yarder situation. Nah, I ain't going there. Hulk, yeah. All right, what's the fantasy question, Slim? I'll take the fantasy question, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Yeah, like I always respected Rivera, but this yeah, he was great, and I'm interested to see what Shaw thought of it. So we'll probably bring it up for a little while for Rashad next week. But Rashad gonna come back and be like, "Dang man, Dave did a 2.5 hour fantasy episode, and then did like a 1 hour, dude doing almost 4 hours." Justin Eckler, I'm taking Eckler over Justin Jackson. Eckler over Justin Jackson. Yeah, I think. Yeah, my rankings changed a bit, man, because now that Tyreek Hill's going to definitely play, it looks like I'm probably going to up Tyreek and lower Dante. But yeah, that the holdout with Melvin Gore is looking pretty legit because the comments that the Chargers said pretty much said they're not extending him. So we're going to see who blinks. I told you they weren't going to pay Gordon, man. Running backs don't get paid. But we're going to see if Gordon's going to legit sit out because it is going to be an interesting conjuring. That's why he was on my do not draft list because I want to try to avoid it if I can. Avoid him if I can. So, but he wants to get paid. He wants to get paid like on that Zeke level. Talking of money, why is Ted DiBiase the new WWE 24/7 champion in 2019? Because there have been 8 so far tonight, and it's been hilarious to watch. It's hilarious to hear. I don't think Melvin Gordon's played a full season yet, has he? But yeah, man. All right. I've had fun. Rashad will be back next week. I appreciate you guys holding on. I appreciate you guys chilling with me for these last 2 weeks while I was solo. It's been a fun ride. Go back and check out the fantasy episode. Go back and check out this episode when it comes in once you watch the series. You can follow me at ChampD1012. You can follow the podcast at Panther Nation PC. You can follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Panther Nation Podcast. We're on Stitcher. We're on good grief, man. We're on everything. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Music. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're definitely gonna be on Apple Podcasts, but we're pretty much on everything. Shout out to the chat cats, and always remember, keep pounding.